Hello, everyone. This is Doug Wilkerson with Central Christian Center and Saturday Night Live Life Recovery. Uh, by the way, this coming Sunday will be Palm Sunday, and the Saturday night before that will be SNL's 18th um, anniversary. We've been running Saturday Night Live for 18 years. This coming this coming Saturday night. So anyway, I just thought I'd throw that in there as a little commercial. So anyway, welcome. I'm glad you're here. This is an encouraging word with Doug. It's been a couple of weeks, maybe 3 weeks since the last time I was here. Been ill, had COVID, had a couple of other things that came up, and anyway, I wanted to get back on track, and I I started a a message the last time I was here, and that was the 3 habits that will make you mentally strong. So today is part 2 of that, and hopefully I can get all the way through that. I've got a lot of information. There's a lot of stuff in it. I'm going to try to. I've got I've got eight sheets of paper here, actually four sheets, 8 sides, and so anyway, we're going to I'll probably delete some of it as I go through, but anyway, that's just the way it is. But anyway, hopefully it will be a help to you. There's a lot of folks out there that's having mental, emotional stressors. It's uh, it's overwhelming. Oftentimes, times you think you're going crazy. You think you're losing it, and you are to some degree, but it's not like you think. You're just overwhelmed and out of sorts. You've been pushed in a emotional and mental dysregulated state, and hopefully some of the things I will talk about here today that you can employ, practice, create new habits that will help you to take the place of some old, maybe unhealthy habits and help you to feel more organized, more together, actually have a greater sense of mental strength and peace, spiritual peace, have some calmness. Anyway, stability. That's my desire for you. So today we're going to go ahead and these 3 items. We got 3 items that we're going to be talking about here. I mentioned them before. I want to say them again just so that we're on the same page. The first one is to be honest about how you feel emotionally. No comment, just need to state them. Number 2, resist unnecessary mental time traveling. That's an interesting statement if you haven't heard me talk about this before. Number 3, distinguishing between wants and values. And actually, number 3 is what really caught my interest on this as I was studying here a while back, and I found this on the internet. I think it's out of most of the time. I try to stay in like Psychology Today and um, different health articles. And so, anyway, that's what we're going to be talking about. And my question to you today is: do you want to build a stronger mental and emotional strength? Well, you first have to want to before you're able, and then you have to. And if you have that want to, then you'll find the way. And hopefully, I'll help you to get the want to, and hopefully, I'll give you some ways, some tools to help you to be stronger mentally and emotionally. I want to start off with a scripture, and I read this last time, and this is out of Isaiah 26:3, which is one of my favorites. Of course, I think I say that every time about different scriptures, but it is. It's been a favorite of mine for a long time. And this is out of the New King James. Says, you, God, will keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on you. We're talking about God. Our mind stayed on God. Okay, we're talking about focus here. I've talked a lot about focus, where you put your intention, your focus, and we'll be talking about that today. I'll finish up the scripture. Because he trusts in you. God trusts. Okay, God trusts in you, but you trust in God, and we have that connection. Isaiah 26:3 out of the Amplified. I thought this was good. It says, "You will keep in perfect and consistent peace the one whose mind is steadfast." That is, committed and focused on you. Talking about focused on God. Okay. In both inclination, in other words, this is your intention, what you want, this is your desire, this is where you want to go, okay, and character. You want that character, your intention, inclination, and character, because he or she trusts and takes refuge in you with hope and confident expectation. With this confidence of hope and great expectation. I put the great in there, but that was out of Isaiah 26:3. That was out of the Amplified. Isaiah 41:10 says, "So do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you, help you. I will uphold you with my right hand of righteousness." And that's by being with him, by doing Isaiah 26:3 and being focused on him. Then we enable God to allow us to have us swooped up in his right hand of righteousness. Right hand of righteousness. Righteousness, my favorite definition of righteousness is right standing with God. Ephesians 6:10 through 18. I'm not going to read all of it. But I'm going to read several scriptures in it. Finally, this is verse 10. This is talking about the armor of God. Finally, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. Put on the whole armor of God. Now, we're talking about putting on something. We're talking about doing something. We're talking about engaging. We're talking about directing our focus, being an active pursuer, a part of what it is that we want. Okay, it says put on the whole armor of God, and those are tools for battle, to be able to live life victoriously. Okay, for our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against authorities, against powers of darkness, power of this dark world, okay, against the power of this dark world and against spiritual forces of evil in heavenly realms. That's good to know that he wants to equip us not to be defenseless, but to be powerful, okay, wearing that armor. Verse 13. I've got this in highlighted, so this is important. Verse 13. They're all important, but this in particular in reference to what we're talking about today. Therefore, put on the whole armor of God, so that when the day of evil comes, you may be able to stand your ground. When the day of evil comes, so that you're able to stand your ground. And after you have done everything to stand firm then. Well, there's been a time that I had this scripture came to me and I wanted to fight or I'd be willing to run. But he said, stand. And that was the hardest choice. But he equipped me. He helped me. He empowered me. And I made it. And so have a lot of you. And we'll make it again. You'll make it right now if you go ahead and choose to stand. You say, well, I don't have strength to stand. Well, the standing is not just in the physical. It is that spiritual decision, that commitment to be. Okay. Then it goes on into the armor of God and the belt of truth and the breastplate of righteousness and preparing your shodding your feet with the gospel. And you can read all that later. But these 3 habits that we're going to be talking about here today is to help you to have this mental strength. Okay, and maybe not all of them will work for you. And I think I went over the first one quite lengthy, and I think I hit the second one, but I don't think I really hit the third one. So I'm gonna touch these other 2, but then try to cover the last one in a little more detail. But it's hard. It's really hard to cut some of this stuff out. But in these having these mental habits, these habits to have mental strength, instead of being stuck in this downward spiral of self-criticism and shame that oftentimes we get stuck in, and then causing us to be mentally weak, emotionally weak, because we're caught in that. We need to allow ourselves to be redirected onto a different path. You have to make that decision. The decision comes before the action. First the decision and then the action. That choice that you want to do something, and then you have to go ahead and then start taking some sort of action. You say, well, I can't do much. You need to do something, okay? You take an action. You begin. Whether it's big or small, you begin. Don't be so harsh and judgmental because it's maybe not as much as you think it should be. Begin. So mental strength might means understanding which parts of your brain you can control and what parts that you can't control. And we need, oftentimes we try to control, like the Serenity Prayer talks about, we try to control, we need to control those areas that we can control, but oftentimes we humans, we try to control things that's outside our control. We put a lot of effort into say we're trying to do something, but it's futile because it's in areas that is out of our control. So here's an example of this. It says you might not be able to control every random thought that pops up in your brain, because they do. Okay, you may not be able to control that, but you can control whether you keep on worrying or thinking about that random thought. Yes, it comes up, and then you let it go. Don't grab a hold of it and keep going. And just because that you have a thought that comes up doesn't mean that it has to stay. Okay. You can't control whether someone has been insensitive to you. You can't control that, but you can control how you respond or what you think about your response to that person. You know, stuff happens, and when it happens, in fact, I had something similar like this happen yesterday at Walmart. You know, and a cashier was trying to help me and got some help, and the person that they got seemed to be really not even care. And I just told him, it's okay. You know, go ahead and continue. He is focused on something else, I guess. And anyway, I made a sarcastic comment, which I felt bad about. And I said, I apologize for my sarcasm. I just tried to clean it up because I don't want to be that way. Do you? I don't. So, um, one of the many benefits of becoming more mentally strong is that it is one of the best ways to improve how you feel emotionally. The more mentally strong you feel, then you'll feel emotionally strong. That makes sense, right? And the only way you can lower your anxiety in the long term is to learn how to control your mental patterns of worry. I thought that was a great statement. Control your mental patterns of worry, okay? Which basically means stop always worrying, okay, about everything. You'll only be able to get a handle on your anger issues when you learn to control your mental patterns of rumination. That makes sense, right? It's hard. It's hard to break the cycle of low self-esteem without learning how to manage your mental patterns of self-criticism. We have to learn how to treat ourselves right. Doesn't that make sense? Yeah. If you want to be emotionally resilient, you must train yourself to be mentally strong, and that's what we're talking about here today. Okay, so the first one was be honest about your how you feel emotionally. We have a big. This habit is really easy to miss. We have a big. Most of us have a real big issue about denying how we feel because a lot of our societal customs are to deny how we feel. Stuff them, you know. At least for most of the time, guys anyway. Not saying that women don't, but it's um, you might think that you're really in touch with your feelings, but I would bet that you're not as in touch as you think you are. Um, Especially the difficult ones, right? For instance, like you had an argument with somebody, maybe your spouse and or somebody and that's significant to you, and you show up to work the next day and somebody says, "How you doing?" Well, your initial response is, "Hey, great. How are you?" Which is totally a response that is not authentic. And when you're not authentic with others, then you're actually you're poisoning your own self because you're lying to yourself and you're lying to others, and you know it. Okay, and so that affects you. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to go just blabbing everything, but you might say, well, you try to justify it and say, well, if I was, it's not appropriate to talk about home life problems in the workplace. Well, that's not. I'm not going to dispute that, except um, you know, um, cutting off your emotions and denying them. Um, you could say, well, hey, I had a difficult day yesterday or last night, had a difficult discussion, and we just had a disagreement, and really, I haven't really got it all worked out yet. So I'm still a little bit kind of working through that. But thank you for asking, and then go on. So we need to first really know how we feel, and we don't know how we feel. And the only way we can know how we feel is we need to ask ourselves, what am I feeling? I've talked to people. I mean, I've had people this week that I've talked with, and they told me that they had everything, they've processed everything, they've worked everything, And but the fact of it is, by just listening a little bit, you heard that they didn't have everything processed, and they didn't hear it. But after got that, either I repeated what they said or brought that up and said, "Well, didn't you just say this? And what does that mean?" Well, that means I haven't really resolved that. Well, not saying that they hadn't resolved some things, and they've resolved a lot of things, to be quite honest with you. But the fact of it is, if we say that it's all complete and it's not complete, then we're lying to ourselves. We don't mean to, okay? But if we lie to ourselves, then actually we put in a roadblock in front of us to be able to go ahead and work through that honesty of our own feelings. And the reason why we do that is because we have told our brain that it's unsafe and damaging to deal with our family, our feelings, our emotions. So it automatically shifts on us, and we think we're in control of all that, but the fact of it is, we trained it to be a particular way, and it engages automatically. So that's the reason why we have to focus intentionally and go ahead and be willing to deal with those emotions. Ask what am I angry? What kind of angry? Is it just frustration? Is it irritation? What is it? And work through these things and figure out where you're at so that you can resolve them instead of being stuck inside of you, pushing you around. Have you ever made the statement, I don't know why I'm acting this way. Well, I don't know why I always do this. Well, that's because that stuff's inside there. And from time to time, it gets triggered and pushes you around. And you basically have suppressed it till a place that it gets triggered or spurts out at the most inappropriate times. And that's what happens. So, so the biggest thing is that we need to learn that we got to retrain our brain that emotions are not dangerous. Now, they're not saying that we just let everything go. Several years ago, people was talking about just express your emotions, and they go into fits of rage that actually does more damage on them than actually helping them. But we need to become aware so we can be consciously in control, be mentally strong and emotionally strong to be able to navigate our way through life, so that we are strong in these areas. Okay, let's go to number 2. Okay, resist unnecessary mental time travel. Now, I talked about this, but this first statement is pretty interesting. It says, the majority of emotional suffering is a direct result of too much mental time traveling. Okay, mental suffering. Most suffering, and we're not talking about physical here, we're talking about mental. It has to do with these irrational beliefs or trying to reorder the past or force the future to be something other than we're afraid of what it's going to be, and so we're inflicting suffering on ourselves. Time travel is, what is time travel? Time travel is remembering the past, and we can't forget the past. Some people say, well, just forget the past, it's the past. Well, no, you learn from the past. You don't want to reduplicate the past, okay? Because if you don't learn, you will reduplicate the past. You'll keep living the same problems over and over. Haven't you found that out to be true? Okay, so we have to learn from the past, okay? But we don't we want to learn it so that we can move forward, make healthier choices, or what the scripture talks about is wisdom, being able to operate in wisdom. So, future time travel is to be able to think with imagination about things that you could do better, things you could resolve, things that you could fix, build things, restore things, be creative, right? But the problem here is we can get good at some of these tools, and then we use that tool for everything in our life. Imagination, some people, too much of that goes into fantasy. I know people that prefer to live in fantasy instead of reality. Reality is right now. Why? Because they found that fantasy, that in a time of their life that was chaotic and harsh, it was a refuge for them. Well, it worked for you then, but the fact of it is that we have to employ the healthiest tool at the time, okay? Or remembering the past, ruminating about the past, being stuck in the past, worrying about the past. We can't alter the past, but we can use it to help us to navigate through our present life now, right? Absolutely. So the antidote to a destructive mental time traveling is this: cultivate the ability to hold your attention in the present moment. Okay. Though being able to remember things in a healthy way is good. Being able to use it, the creative power to imagine and think through issues, what if situations are good. But the fact of it is, to really navigate life is to be able to turn that on and turn that off at appropriate times. And the way that you do that is by practicing, in particular, by pulling yourself back into the present, being in the now. One suggestion that was made was to, when you are driving and you come up to a traffic light and you're stopped there, use those few seconds, 30 seconds or so, or a minute, in extreme case, to pull yourself back into the present, where you're at, what's going on. Be in the present time. Listen. If you're listening to the radio, actually listen to the radio, or you be in control of your thoughts. That's called concentration, and you can do that. One concentration habit that I developed, that I instituted in my life many years ago was, this may sound lame, but it helped me, is to count backwards from 100 in succession without missing one. And if I missed, then I had to start over, and had to learn to stay with it, and not only count it, but visualize it. Okay. In other words, like you'd see it on a blackboard or an elevator or something like that. And to do those things to help me to gain the ability to direct my concentration or focus, being where I choose to be instead of being drug off in where I don't want to be. Okay. So the thing that you want to remember here is the ability to mentally time travel is a tool used mindfully, not mindlessly. Number 3, distinguish between wants and values. And this is so important, wants and values, because we have, God has put inside of us this survival mechanism of avoiding pain and seeking pleasure, and that was part of our survival mechanism to stay alive. And there's nothing wrong with our survival mechanism, except there's a place where that survival mechanism, if we continue to stay in that, when we need to go ahead and learn and grow and develop and do new and hard things, then that means we're going to, it's not necessarily going to be pleasant at the time, because it's hard, and that it and it, you know, could be painful, and it won't be necessarily pleasant, but it will be beneficial. Okay, so distinguish a big part of mental strength is the ability to resist unhelpful impulses. Okay, we have these impulses that want to push us around. They you know, urges, um, you know, cravings, things like that. And if you, the trouble is, if you continue to give in to those urges and those impulses, and we go ahead and do that, you get more susceptible to them. They become more powerful in your life. They will take control. They'll, you know, and they're way harder to get away from. Okay, because they become next thing you know, they become a habit pattern of behavior. So so. So we have to be willing to look at these impulses and say, is that just a want or a desire, an impulse, a craving, or is that part of my value, what I really want to be? All right. We already kind of talked about this. Somebody says something bad, harsh to you, or insults you, or something like that. Sometimes our natural response is to react in a similar way. Okay, sarcastic remark or harsh remark, or somebody jabs us, we figure out a way to jab them back. And the trouble is that's not really going to, well, is that going to get you really want to go? Let's just ask it instead of say it. And so we have to see, what is your value? Okay, what values, life core values, where you want to go. All right, some examples here that they've written down. You've decided that you want to start exercising. You want to work out 5 times a day, but this particular day you just decide, I want to be lazy, and you don't keep up with your commitment. Well, the next day it gets harder, doesn't it? And because you do that to yourself, because you violated your own value system. And so what you have to do is you have to be willing to deal with yourself. This is my values. That I just want to chill out. Well, the trouble is, there's a reason why you want to do that. You need to intensify what it is that you were valuing, and that you wanted your values out of life, for whatever purpose that is. You need to intensify your values instead of letting your impulses pull you around. Somebody says something rude to you, that you make a comment back at them. Well, is that the way you want to be? You make that decision, and when you mess up, then you just need to clean it up. I think we already touched on that. So all too often, our best intention gets sabotaged by our own brain in the impulses, reactions, cravings, fear, and things that are like that. In the recovery movement and a lot of other related areas, they talk about urges. They talk about urge surfing, riding the urge like you ride a wave, and you get on. You recognize it. You don't deny it, but you see it's there, and then you let it run its course out. And it runs out. It doesn't take too long. Some research says it lasts from 5 seconds to 30 seconds. Some say 3 minutes to 5 minutes. If you have deeply ingrained urges, it may take a little longer than that. But the truth of it is, if you recognize it and start to deal with it, you can start diminishing that. Believe it or not. Believe it or not. But the trick is that it's difficult to simply resist an unhelpful impulse. It's hard to fight against that because there's so much power behind it. You know, it made a statement here that this impulse power is very strong. In fact, but they said that we're stronger, and I think it's kind of like the old story about whichever dog you feed, the white dog or the black dog. The old Indian told actually called them wolves, and the little boy said, well, which is stronger, the black dog or the white dog? And the Indian grandfather said, whichever one you feed the most. And so, what do you feed? Okay, what do you feed? Abraham Maslow said that if the only tool that you have is a hammer, then you think every problem is a tool. So every problem is a nail. Excuse me. And so we have to recognize that we have to use the right tool in the right spot, or we're misusing tools. A while ago, I mentioned about that it causes emotional suffering. You know, I had down on my notes, and I think I skipped through it, but it came back to me right now, and that is Spinoza says that emotion, which is suffering, which is a very interesting statement. Emotion, which is suffering, ceases to be suffering as soon as you get a clear and precise picture of it. So when you figure out that these impulses are pushing you around, or your cravings, or your desire for drugs or nicotine or drink or whatever obsessive compulsive behavior is going on, recognize it, and then change your focus from that. Instead of thinking about the craving or the urge, you need to focus on where you want to go instead of focusing on where you don't want to go. You need to think, instead of saying don't think about pink elephants, because if you say don't think about pink elephants, that's all you're going to do. If you say don't worry about running into that wall, and don't look at that wall, you need to look at where you need to go. And it's hard not to look at that wall that you're afraid you're going to crash into, but you need to look at the path that you need to take. And that's hard, and that takes some mental strength. It takes some mental and emotional endurance. So anxiety is a major issue in us, and it wants to interrupt your life and take over your future. And so what we have to do is employ tools in our life to help us to steer through those anxiety minefields. And that's what we're talking about. And you say, well, none of the things that you've said really, I don't think it'll help me. Well, think about it. I bet you could come up with some. Well, surely you've had something come up that's helped you in the past. And the thing of it is, this is vast, and whatever works for you, and on top of that, not everything that works today will work next week or next year. You have to figure out what works. Sometimes it's using music, sometimes it's using exercise, sometimes it's using work, sometimes it's using scriptures, sometimes it's just using a prayer. You figure out what works for you. A lot of people want to read the scriptures, and the thing of it is, you can read and not be there mentally. Have you ever done that? I have, and I'll have to say, wait. Focus. Okay. And the more you do that, the more you practice that, the better you get at it. What's your core value? What is it you really want? That's what we're talking about here. So whatever you practice, that's going to be your habit, and that's going to be ingrained. And then your habits will run your life. In fact, there's one poem that says it becomes your destiny. So you can decide where you want to go, and then you have to choose to practice it. And that if you choose to practice destruction, you're going to get better at destruction. How's that going to work out for you? So, mental strength is the ability to control your brain instead of it being in control of you. Now, your brain it has been designed to try to take care of you. So it's not trying to, your brain is not really designed to make you happy. Many have said this. I think it's an interesting statement. Your brain wasn't designed to make you happy. Your brain was designed to keep you alive. And sometimes it puts you in destructive paths. So anyway, we'll leave it right there. I think I've gone way too long. So, hey, may the Lord bless you, keep you. May his face shine upon you and give you his peace, and make healthy choices. Hey, be good to be in church Sunday. If you're here at Central, make sure you say hi. Have a good day till next time.